Well, a very good morning to you all and welcome to Thrive and Enjoy, celebrating Peterborough Men's Mental Health Day. It's a great pleasure for me personally to have been asked to introduce this conference. Apologies to us all that we're doing it online rather than having the 130 people who were signed up to be in this room today. That's a sign of the times and probably a sign of just how pertinent men's mental health is and will be going forward. My name's Richard. I'm a Peterborough-based business owner. I'm a father, husband, son, brother, friend, and I'm a man. And I worry about my mental health on a daily basis. I wonder whether there could ever have been a more pertinent time to talk about men's mental health. I was just talking to one of the colleagues in the room now about the impending bubble, if you like, of what's going to come out of lockdown in terms of poor mental health and its consequences. The impact of the confinement of lockdown, the impact of either job loss or the worry of job loss. We know there are some horrible statistics starting to emerge about domestic violence, which I think in many ways is a result of some of that lockdown conditions and of poor deteriorating mental health, and the anxiety that I think every family, every individual is feeling at this moment. So when Ian and his colleagues planned this for July 2020, they knew it was important to talk about men's mental health. I wonder if we knew just how important it would be and how pertinent it would be. So it really is a great pleasure and privilege to welcome this event and, of course, the establishment of the Men's Hub in Peterborough, which will flow from it. My own views on mental health, for what they're worth, are defined by three things: a statistic, a book title, both of which are wrong, and of course, my own experiences. Let's start with the statistic. If you Google search, and I just did, mental health incidents, you get a top search right at the very top that says 1 in 4 people in the world will be affected by mental or neurological disorders at some point in their lives. I think that's just totally wrong. And there is a book title, I'm sure you may have read it, it's a very good book, called It's Not Okay to Feel Blue. And I think that's wrong as well, although I'm being a bit naughty there because the author isn't suggesting that, but the title, to me, is misleading. Because in my view of the world, and I stress that it's my view, I'm no expert, we are all affected by mental health pretty much all the time. So this 1 in 4 statistic should be a 1 in 1 statistic. 100% of people are affected most of the time by degrees and variations of good and bad mental health, in just the same way that we're affected by physical health. And whether that is extreme conditions that make it impossible to get to work, to get up, to be a father, to be an employer, to be a good friend, and that can lead to, right to the extreme of mental health, or simply the anxiety that strikes all of us from nowhere and without reason and that we can't explain, or just a case of Monday blues. Oh my goodness, I'm back to work. To me, that is all gradients on a spectrum of mental health. Indeed, if I think about my own experience, I would suggest, and I'm very fortunate, I recognize that I have good physical health, then I think more about my mental health, and perhaps the clue is in that word think, than I do about physical health. And I wonder as well about whether there's an artificial distinction there. You know, the brain is part of our physical body, so when we talk about mental health and physical health as if they're different things, that worries me a little bit. I don't have a mental health condition, or no one's ever told me I have. I'm generally pretty positive, but I'm absolutely happy to admit that there are moments every week when I can feel paralyzed by anxiety. I feel unsure of myself. I'm pretty clear that despite the outward trappings of success, I'm not particularly good at anything. I don't have self-worth. These moments come. They come every week. And you know what? I worry about being worried. And I think that can be very debilitating as well. Sadness, call it blue. I don't think it is right to say that it's not okay to feel blue. I think it's not only okay, but I think it's normal to feel blue. And to suggest otherwise, that it's not okay to feel blue, drives mental health underground as if it's something you shouldn't talk about it because it's not okay. Well, we should all acknowledge that we have bad days, bad moments, bad weeks, and that causes anxiety. And we should, I think, most importantly, not be worried about this. We should acknowledge that it's part of our condition and face up to it, deal with it in the different ways. And so not worry about the stigma of feeling blue, anxious, or depressed. Does anyone worry about having the flu? You know, you don't want to tell anybody I've had the flu. We don't, these days, perhaps we used to, but we don't hide physical disability away in the corner. In fact, I don't know if anyone can remember, but back in 2012, for the Paralympic Games here in London, Channel 4 had a wonderful exposition from disabled athletes who were positively celebrating their identity and definition because of their disability. Very keen to talk about it, to celebrate it. So why should there be any stigma amongst men, amongst women, or however you define your gender about mental health? And I think perhaps as men, we do have a particular task to live up to here. Whether we're leaders of families, friendship groups, companies, charities, sports clubs, we need to step up to the mark, acknowledge this, and set an example by talking about our mental health and addressing it. We talk about our health all the time. How are you doing? Oh, I got a bit of a cold. Yeah, we're happy to talk about that. It's the same thing. How are you doing? Well, I've not been feeling that great this week. I'm just a bit stressed by stuff at work. It's really getting me down. Be honest about it. Talk about it. And I guess, because I was chatting earlier about, am I going to get in trouble, even though it's Men's Mental Health Day, and I don't want to get accused of gender bias. All of this applies, I think, across the gender spectrum. But perhaps it is right for us as men to start getting on and talking about this, because historically we haven't done enough of it. We're not great at it. And again, I would acknowledge that myself. How are you doing, Richard? I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm really positive. You're not. But you want to show that you're the leader. You're the man in the house, in the company, in your friendship group. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. And you're not. So we mustn't fall into that trap of wanting to show everyone that I'm not blue. It's not okay to feel blue. I'm not going to do that. So come on, men. Let's man up and talk about how we feel. Because I would also add that it isn't just enough to talk about mental health and be braver about socializing it. We also need to think hard about how we create the conditions in which people can improve their well-being. Because again, I would go back to it, like with physical health, there is a degree of personal responsibility in all of this. Not entirely. Like with physical health, some of us can be just plain unfortunate and are stricken by something that they can't control. But we do have some ability to control and manage aspects of our mental health in the same way that we can manage our physical health, by making ourselves more resilient and more able to cope with the peaks and troughs of conditions and everyday stresses and strains. And I just picked out 3 that perhaps shout out to me about the ways in which we can manage this. One is about physical activity and sport. And I think, again, a lot of men love their sport, but, get off the couch, go and play sport, get physically active. I've seen a lot of that over lockdown. The number of people out my way, and I live in one of the villages, who are cycling, running, walking, just going out with their family and taking physical exercise. It's great to see that increase, and we have to, as a society, take that increase and build on it and more so that people understand just how much physical activity, engagement in sport, team activities can create the conditions for better mental health. Not a panacea, absolutely not, but certainly something that can help. The environment too, the importance of green open space, that's something I'm personally passionate about. My mental health took a massive lift last night at about 11 o'clock at night, when I went out specifically looking for glowworms in the countryside, and I found 250. How did that make me feel? Exuberant about the wonders of nature. And overhead was the comet. That was my mental health going up and up, because I was out in green open space, I was getting fresh air, and I was amazed at the wonders of nature. And again, we're seeing lots of statistics about people through lockdown taking solace in nature and in green open space. Let's build on that. Let's make sure men, women, all genders are taking advantage of the environment and the benefits that can bring. And the third thing, so sport, physical activity, the environment, the third thing is social groups, such as the hub that we're talking about today, allowing us to just sort of, talk to each other, get support, build resilience, because we know we're not alone in this, that this is something that we're all coping with. So I do think there are elements of this that we can all as men take control of and set an example and help each other. I wanted to leave you with the words of a poem that I read just yesterday. My daughter runs an amazing blog called Mind the Gap Graduates, where they talk about the stresses and strains and anxieties of becoming an adult and emerging from university into a pretty hostile, unfriendly world in many ways. And the people on that blog talk a lot about their mental health, which is wonderful because they're talking about it. They're acknowledging it. They're helping each other. And on that blog yesterday appeared a poem by Chris. I'm not very good at reading poetry, so forgive me if I don't get the emphasis and the scan right, but I think the words are wonderful. There was always a next step, goals in the mind that form structure and concept. But one day it's gone, and you feel like for years and years you have slept, tied in an iron coil, accumulating debt, and the worry turns to crippling fret. For what? And to what end? You feel there is nothing to which your skills can put out an aiding hand. The establishment doesn't want you. There is no merit to you. Those close to you tell you, don't believe it, it's not true. You know this, but it still doesn't get through. Doubts brew, and hatred of yourself sprouts, strengthens and starts anew. You want to vent and moan, but it all comes back to you. And that poem, written by a young male graduate struggling to find a place in the world, to me defines a generation that is ready to talk about and acknowledge mental health, their worries and concerns in a way that my generation simply wasn't. I don't know anybody in my peer group when I was that age that would talk about these things. So there's a great step forward already. It's a generation of young people and young men that face huge risks and opportunities. We are a society in tremendous flux. It's a generation that, from my random personal observations, is struggling. I think it's struggling to find its place in our world. But it's also a generation of young men that offers great hope for the future. If we help them now to take their place in our society, or rather not, to take their place in reshaping our society for the better, so that we have better outcomes for all. And I would perhaps leave this conference and my introduction with just one key message. I really hope that our political leaders see this too and understand that the road to recovery from COVID-19 isn't all about the economy. How can there be any more important objective than improving the physical and mental health and well-being of the nation, of our men, women, people, children, whatever? And understanding that economic recovery is important, but it should be seen not as an end in itself, but as a means by which we drive improved health, well-being, and create a stronger, better informed, more balanced, more sustainable, and can I say, therefore, happier society, where men, indeed all, can indeed thrive and enjoy. Thank you, Ian. Thank you and your team for bringing this conference to Peterborough. I wish you all very well in the discussions today, and let's hope we can see this as a significant step forward in achieving that ambition. Thank you.
So good morning and welcome to Peterborough Men's Mental Health Day. Thank you, Richard, for your introduction and for starting this meeting off so well. I'd also like to say a few other thank yous before we get going. So thank you very much to Paul Smith of Alia Future Business Centre, who's allowed us to use this venue today. Thank you very much also to our event sponsors, Ellen Jackson Videography and Success Formulae. Without these sponsors, we wouldn't have been able to convert the event to an online format. I'd also like to thank the speakers and panel members who have given up their time for free to be part of this event and who have shared personally their stories about their own mental health journeys. I'd also like to thank Shelley and Christian, who have provided some really valuable guidance into the format of this event and making it so accessible to everyone. And finally, but not least, Kim, my partner, who has supported me, especially during the last couple of weeks when we've been adapting to the situation around coronavirus and making a kind of relatively last-minute decision to turn this to an online event. At times, I felt a little bit more like an event disorganiser rather than an organiser. I'm going to run through the agenda for the day in a moment, but first of all, I'd like to remind you that if you're watching this online now, and maybe you've just been forwarded this talk or other talks via email, you can still register on Eventbrite right up until the end of today, Thursday, to receive details of the talk replays, which will be available on a YouTube playlist very shortly. We're also hosting a Zoom focus group discussion later today, so 3:15 p.m. this afternoon, a live discussion which you can join in from the safety of your own home via Zoom and have your say about this topic of men's mental health. So the lineup for the rest of the day. In a few moments, I'm going to give my perspective on mental health and my opinion on how we can modernise the discussion around mental health for men. Then we have Gary Johannes, who's going to focus really on what mental health really is and give us some really useful tips on how to improve our mental health and how to spot poor mental health in other people. After that, we have an excellent session from Steve Consalves, and he's going to talk about the topic of empowerment for men and hopefully give us some interesting insights into how we can, through vulnerability, find our own empowerment. Then we have a very brief announcement from Paul Smith, who is the manager here at Alia Future Business Centre, about his desire to create a hub or a regular meeting space for men to come and open up about their own experiences. This afternoon there are two panel discussions, which are, so the morning sessions are kind of general information and guidance on mental health. This afternoon we're really going to focus in on the needs of Peterborough. We know that there's a big gap in the city of support and a gap of people understanding what services are already out and available in the city. So the question we're asking is, how can we boost the support available? How can we create a better network? And there are two panel discussions. We've got a wonderful lineup of 8 different people giving their opinions, sharing their own personal experiences of their own mental health challenges, but also their valuable experience from their organisations and their own lives. And just a reminder, 3:15 p.m. this afternoon on Zoom. The link for the Zoom meeting, you have to register separately for this. The link is available on the Facebook page and the Eventbrite page. Thank you very much.